First up, updates from the Israeli-Hamas conflict, with the Israeli Security Cabinet just a while back on Friday approved a Gaza ceasefire and hostage release deal. The agreement, which must now go to the full cabinet for a final green light. This decision involves the exchange of dozens of hostages held by Hamas, the militant group, for Palestinian prisoners in Israeli jails, and a temporary pause in the 15-month-long conflict. The Security Cabinet, remember, is a small body composed of senior members of the government, namely the Ministers of Defense, Strategic Affairs and few others. My colleague Jessica Taneja tracking this story very closely, joining us live from our DD India newsroom. Jessica, take us through the contours of the deal and what's the latest that you're picking up?
Sakul, just day before, when we were all waiting with bated breath on how will this ceasefire deal, which has come in after nearly 470 days of war that has gripped the entire Middle East, and certainly on anticipated lines, but of course coming with its own set of complications. But now with the Security Cabinet giving it an approval, of course, it's just going to be in the Parliament, and we will get ratified from there. Now, important to understand what all does the ceasefire deal currently offer. It is not different from what the Biden administration had proposed back in May last year. And it is somewhat an extension. That deal also saw exchange of hostages, but it was a short-lived one, and we saw what happened there, and the casualties still continued. And as we talk about the agreement on the ceasefire deal, the military occupation right now in West Bank continues, the military operations continue, and certainly the ceasefire deal is going to come as a relief, not just for the civilians in Gaza, but also for the people of Israel who've been waiting for the hostages. Now, in this particular deal, there are three phases. In the first phase, as is proposed in this initial agreement, would see the implementation of exchange of hostages deal, which would then mean that 33 Israeli hostages will be returned in place of hundreds of Palestinian prisoners with the Israeli authorities. And that would be a difficult thing to see, a difficult thing to implement, so to say, in the next coming days, but that has been agreed upon. The terms and conditions of those are still being worked on, so we don't have more details, but it does start on Sunday, which is tomorrow, pardon me, day after, on the 19th. And the second phase and the third phase of the deal will only come into effect once the implementation of the first one is done, which would also require sending in aid trucks, approximately 500 of them every day, because the 2 million people who are now without houses and aid and water and basic sanitation supplies in Gaza are in dire need of that.
Right. Having said that, Jessica, this ratification comes after a delay of sorts, which also led to a lot of apprehensions that this deal would come unstuck. There would be roadblocks. So if now it passes to full cabinet for sign-off, is there a possibility that we could come up with a big surprise, or is it almost certain that all decks are cleared?
Well, it is a very complicated ceasefire deal to agree upon, given the current events of the United States with the new with the transition going to take place, and Donald Trump's inauguration on January 20th, which is Monday. And if the deal goes through, the hostages exchanges will start on Sunday. But yes, we still have a day before that where the Parliament has to ratify that deal. And we've seen how problematic it has been for Benjamin Netanyahu back home, especially with pressures from his own government. But what is crucial and important to understand about the ceasefire agreement is the fact that it has only been agreed at this moment. Its implementation is going to be 10 times difficult than anticipated, because the overall deal is for 42 days. And only on the 16th day of the ceasefire, once it's reached the 16th day, will the implementation of the second and third phase go on. And in the second phase, there'll be withdrawal of troops. So that will be be an even more complicated set of negotiations to follow, given how it's, given how Qatar, Egypt, United States, along with Jordan, have been able to pull off so far. But how much of it will hold in the future is the question.
Okay. Finally, even though it has drawn fierce resistance from Netanyahu's far-right coalition partners, you also spoke about it. Will these objections or resistance or sort of reluctance from certain political quarters really matter? Would it be detrimental to destabilize his government?
But if you recall, Sakal, on the day the Qatar Prime Minister was to announce the ceasefire agreement, we'd already heard from the Trump, administration about how the ceasefire agreement has been historic. It's been achieved because Trump's promises during the election campaign on how he wants to end the war in West Asia, along with work in Ukraine. So this had led to the kind of fruition he had hoped and wanted. But then, just later this evening, the Qatar Prime Minister press conference was delayed by 2 hours for that announcement, although he did go ahead and announce it. But then there were reports suggesting that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office and the security cabinet hadn't agreed yet or hadn't voted on it yet, and primarily because of the opposition from some of his coalition members, party members as well. For example, the National Security Minister, who threatened to resign if this deal goes ahead. There were reports suggesting to that effect as well. So yes, internally there's a lot of pressure on Benjamin Netanyahu, particularly when it comes to the hostages, because that is not going down either with the polity or the public. That is not in favor of the current political landscape that Israel finds itself in.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Many thanks, Jessica Taneja of DD India, for joining us from Newsroom on this big international story and that crucial development. Thank you.